All right, so I look at the Eastern Conference standings, right? And I know how I'm supposed to feel, but I just can't get myself to feel like that, right? It's supposed to feel like we got two juggernauts at the top in the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's supposed to feel like the Rockets and the Warriors back in the day. But for whatever reason, I just can't view the Celtics and the Cavaliers in that way. And it's an obvious reason, right? When you look at the Rockets and the Warriors back in the day, they had three of, if not the four best players in the conference at that time, considering what was going on with Kawhi Leonard and his health situation. But it seemed almost impossible for someone else to beat those teams when you look at a prime Steph Curry, a prime James Harden, a prime Kevin Durant, and Chris Paul, I would say still prime Chris Paul. So this current situation is probably obvious why we feel the way we feel. First of all, it's just gonna take, I think it's gonna take history for us to realize how good Jason Tatum actually is. Like, I don't think we're gonna accept that until we're, 10 years after his retirement, when we can sit back and look at his resume, which is probably not even halfway finished yet. So maybe a couple more rings and we'll change the way we feel about Jason Tatum. But right now, it's hard for us to accept that Jason Tatum is like on an all-time great trajectory, like a top 20 player trajectory. Again, I know that sounds crazy right now, but I think history is gonna look back at Jason Tatum fondly. But in this moment, no one really views him like that. And then you got Donovan Mitchell, who I made a video about the Cavs earlier in the year. And I think the name of that video was, Do You Believe in Donovan Mitchell? Because if you really believed in Donovan Mitchell as the best player on a championship team, then there would be no questions about this team. You could convince yourself that, I don't know if Evan Mobley's ready, or I don't know if Jared Allen's ready, yada, 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 all valid questions, right? But if you believed that Donovan Mitchell was one of those guys, then you wouldn't have that many questions about this Cavs team. But a lot of us, either consciously or subconsciously, don't believe in Donovan Mitchell as the best player on the championship team, don't believe in Jason Tatum as this all-time great figure. We don't see him like a Kevin Durant or a prime Kawhi Leonard, even though, statistically, resume, he's right there with those guys. So I'm really just explaining to myself why I don't view the Eastern Conference in the way I probably should. But again, the elephant in the room is these two teams at the top don't have the best players in the conference, at least we think, right? Again, who knows how history is going to remember players, but right now you would say Joel Embiid, Giannis, two best players in the conference. Then even a step down from that, you got Jalen Brunson, you got Damian Lillard, you got Tyrese Maxey, you got Trae Young, you got Tyrese Halliburton, you got even Karl Anthony Towns, all players that really could look eye to eye with Donovan Mitchell and say, I'm just as good as you, whether you believe that or not. That's not a far out take. And I'm trying to give Jason Tatum the respect he deserves, but even a guy like Trae Young or Jalen Brunson could look at Tatum and say, I'm just as good as you, right? Those guys can't look at Giannis that way, they can't look at Embiid that way. But Tatum, Mitchell, they can feel like that. Maybe this is cope, maybe this is me just trying to keep myself intrigued by the Eastern Conference, the 60 games we have left of it. I didn't even mention Paolo, who went toe-to-toe with Donovan Mitchell last year in the playoffs, another guy that you can add to that. So I'm really just yapping here. I'm not saying much, right? These two teams are the best teams. They look great. I think it would actually be amazing for basketball if the Celtics won again and we start giving Jason Tatum the respect he deserves and he becomes like a real household name. That would be amazing for basketball. Like I said, I'm just coping because the East does not look good. I'm really hoping Paul George has a run right now. Who knows what the Joel Embiid situation is about to be. A lot of people are writing off PG. I think he's about to have a moment here. If Embiid has to miss a few games, McCain's out indefinitely, I think Paul George, this is what they got you for. I think he's about to put his stamp on this season and hopefully save their season. The Hawks are looking better. The Bucks are looking better. Basically, just get to the playoffs healthy. Everyone healthy. I know that's wishful thinking, but get to the playoffs. I have Joel Embiid. I have Paul George. I have Maxey. I could convince myself as a fan that, you know what, Boston, you don't want to see us, even if that's not true. If I'm the Hawks and we get into the first round, we're going against Cleveland, and I have Trae Young, if I'm a Hawks fan, I'm convincing myself Trae Young is the best player on the court. It's hard to envision that with Tyrese Halliburton the way he's been playing this year, but maybe he's, catching a rhythm. He's been playing a little bit better. Maybe by the time we get to playoff basketball, you could convince yourself that Tyrese Halliburton is in that conversation. Obviously, Jalen Brunson, we know that. Cat, we know that. So that's all I'm really hoping for. And just to make the distinction, like, no matter what was going on in the Western Conference, Nobody thought, even the Blazer fan did not think, you know what, we got Dame. He's going to be the best player in a series against prime Steph Curry. Nobody was really thinking that. Whereas if I were a Hawks fan and we're going up against the Celtics again, I could genuinely convince myself that Trae Young is going to be the best player in this series. And that makes for a lot more hope, which is what we need in this Eastern Conference, because it has not been fun watching a lot of these Eastern Conference teams. And it's also just a reminder that regular season basketball is a lot different than playoff basketball. Yeah, for an 82-game season, Dame is not better than a lot of these young guys anymore, but in a 7-game series, can Dame be the best player on the court in 2 or 3 of those 7 games? Absolutely, and sometimes that's all you really need. You look at Joel Embiid and Paul George, do we think of them as historical playoff risers? Absolutely not. But an 82-game schedule for those guys on their body, obviously we're seeing the wear and tear it's doing right now. But in a 7-game series, you have Joel Embiid and Paul George. Can those guys turn it up? Absolutely. And I know we've all been kind of making fun of the East this year because it's been terrible. But I think it's important to remember at the beginning of this year, we thought the East was going to be deep. We thought it was going to be competitive. Again, because we thought Giannis and Embiid would be right in the middle of this, and it's not over. When we get to the end of the year, those guys are going to be right in the middle of it. If you're asking me what would I put my money on, clearly it's going to be the Celtics, right? Too much spacing on the court. Again, we underrate how great Jason Tatum actually is. It would be the Celtics. And we don't have to relitigate how easy their playoff run was last year, but I would also just want to see them tested more. And I think we got a lot of teams that can test them this year, and we're just not viewing it that way because it seems like they are so far ahead. But I would love to see the Knicks against them. I would love to see Tatum and Jaylen Brown against OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, right? I would love to see that. I would love to see a fully healthy Cavs team against them with the size and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. I would love to see Giannis and Dame and Chris Middleton going into Boston. I would love to see the Hawks now with Dyson Daniels. I know that sounds crazy, but having Dyson Daniels as another defender on the perimeter against a team with a bunch of perimeter threats. We just didn't have to see the Celtics deal with anything like that on their run to the finals last year. It is what it is. We don't have to go through it again, but I would love to see it. I would even love to see Paolo and Franz matching up with Tatum and Brown, right? I think that would be very intriguing with Jalen Suggs as well. I think they need to make a move and go get another perimeter player. I keep saying CJ McCollum, perfect fit, but I already talked about that a lot, so we'll leave that right there. But yeah, we're getting ready for trade season, and when you look at it, almost all the teams you talk about are Western Conference teams because they look at the West and they feel like it's wide open. You know, they respect the Thunder for sure, but they look at them and say, you know, we can go at them. In the Eastern Conference, it feels like people are treating the Celtics the way people treated the Warriors back in the day. And back in the day, the only real team in the Western Conference that was like, you know what, we can beat those guys was the Rockets. So the Rockets swung for the fences. They got Chris Paul, and they almost made it happen. Who knows what happens if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, right? In the East, it kind of seems like everyone's just willing to stand pat right now and see what happens going forward. Ironically, the only guy that was swinging for the fences was Daryl Morey again, going out and getting Paul George. But I don't want to say you should just try to rush and do something, but I'm not viewing it like it's not wide open. And you know what? Another team that clearly went all in is the New York Knicks. So, you know, shout out to them as well, giving up 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. Clearly, they are not viewing the Celtics as this juggernaut of a team. They feel like they can compete with them. So I know that's crazy to say about the Celtics, but I just wouldn't be viewing it like, man, we should just wait. We should just wait our turn. But to be fair, it's also hard to distinguish how close you actually are, because before this year, I think a lot of people would have said the Pacers are close. And the Pacers are a team that potentially could make a move right now to try to double down on it. And if I was them, I'm not sure how I would feel about doing that. Are we that close? Are we that close at all? It just feels like everybody in the Eastern Conference is in stand pat mode, and the Celtics are at the top. The Cavs are right there at the top. But is any team in the Eastern Conference going to make a move to try to win now? Like the move the Warriors just made? We're going to end the video. I'm sorry, this video was just completely all over the place, just a lot of yapping. Not sure I made a single coherent point, but it was a lot of coping. Just me trying to feel like this playoff run, this playoff push in the East is going to be good. And I genuinely do believe that. Like, we're gonna have Giannis, Trae Young, Embiid, Tatum, Brunson, Cat, Paul George. Like, all these guys are gonna be in the playoffs. But Dame, I didn't say Dame. Like, it's gonna be competitive. Question is, can anybody beat Boston? Because I do think if, say, the Cavs can beat Boston, I do think more teams feel like they can beat Cleveland. I just know it is going to be a battle for Boston, and if they come out the East again, nobody can say anything. They're going to have to go through either the Cavs, Bucks, or the Cavs, Bucks, or Knicks, right? I believe those are the three worst matchups for them, and they can't avoid all of them, right? So let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought about this general yap session. Do you believe any team could really upset Boston? Do you believe Boston is like miles and miles ahead of everybody? Or do you feel like it's going to be a competitive playoff run in the Eastern Conference? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe on the road to 6K. I'm out. Peace.